Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Happy Thanksgiving. So, I finally got Oklahoma. I finished the Always Courageous collection. Now, I wasn't really trying, but I would check from time to time to see what the requirements were. And it was relatively easy to get. And I have to say, she is quite a beauty. It's a very nice looking ship. I like this camo on her. I feel like she really looks like a real mean dreadnought, and I'm just slightly, maybe slightly is understatement, disappointed that her capabilities in the game don't match the way she looks because she looks really, really, really good. Now, World of Warships has been very busy lately, and they have created a lot of content centered on US battleships. So we got the Premium Tier 7 California, we got the Premium Tier 7 Florida, right? We got the Oklahoma, we got the whole new US battleship line with the Kansas, Minnesota, Vermont. So a lot of new ships, but I am afraid to say also a lot of misplaced effort, perhaps. Because I think the path that the World of Warships has chosen when it comes to this new edition of the US battleships is not to make them very entertaining, I must say, because of the long reload times, because of very slow speed. It's um it's uh it's done a somewhat of a disservice, I guess, to the new line, in my opinion, definitely. So I have not played all of them, so I cannot speak to all of them. But I did play California, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And as far as those three are concerned, I think they all suffer from the same problem. The problem of the speed, the problem of reload time, and I think AA is spotty. Some of the ships have good AA, some not so good, and so on. So now, coming back to Oklahoma. Oklahoma gets to live in the Tier 5 space, and we already have New York and Texas at this tier. All three ships are armed with 10 14-inch guns. In terms of HE output, New York is first, Texas second, Oklahoma third at 98, 88, and 74,000 DPM for Oklahoma. So I guess, the slow reload time hits there as well. You also have a slightly weaker HE shell, so that also has a negative impact on Oklahoma. Now, the same thing happens in the AP as well. New York, 203k DPM, Texas, 180, Oklahoma, 150. Oklahoma just can't get a break. And then on top of the slow reload and low DPM, you also have the AP pen values for Oklahoma that have been really nerfed into the ground. So, just looking at the belt armor, Oklahoma has a slightly better belt armor of 343 millimeters. Now, at a 45-degree angle, that's an equivalent 485 millimeters of armor. Now, if you look at the New York AP pen values, courtesy of World of Warships fitting website, you can see that New York can pen that from 9.6 kilometers. Now let's take a look and see how well does the Oklahoma do against New York in this case. So New York belt armor is 280 millimeters. At 45-degree angle, it's 396. And Oklahoma can pen that from 2.4 kilometers. So let's take a look at that again. 9.6 kilometers, New York and Penn, thicker armor. 2.4 kilometers, Oklahoma, Penn's, New York's thinner armor. And I think that's that's certainly a big problem when it comes to Oklahoma. Her ability to engage other battleships, her ability to be effective against other battleships using her AP. I mean, yes, she can target cruisers, but you have the lower DPM values and you have no pen. I'm sure there are other things that will make up for it, but we'll take a look at those a little later. The AP values that Oklahoma has, Wyoming at tier 5 has better AP values. South Carolina at tier 3 is better until 10K. It's perhaps, just perhaps, World of Warships erred here on the wrong side of trying to make this ship, you know, relevant in the game. Again, my opinion. And perhaps the reason that World of Warships decided to really nerf the AP pen values for Oklahoma so harshly is because the ship has a secondary set of guns that reach all the way up to 8.3 kilometers if you build for it. So for tier 5, that is pretty long range and it's pretty unique. But obviously, when I got the ship, I built it for the secondaries and I played the ship with the secondaries to the maximum range. And what I found was that their impact on the game really was not that big. A, it's very hard for you to close in on anyone if they are not willing, right? Your speed is 19 and a half knots. So it's very hard for you to get close to anyone. And B, I found these secondaries not to be very precise or very accurate. So their maximum dispersion is 237 meters at 8.32 kilometers. Now, the issue here is, and I compared it to Massachusetts, right? The issue here is Massachusetts, for Massachusetts, it's 308 meters at 11.3K. And if you bring that down to 9K, it becomes 262. So 262 for Massachusetts, 237 for Oklahoma, 8.3 versus 9 kilometers. The thing is, with Massachusetts, you can apply the manual secondary, and because how the manual secondary works with higher tier ships, your maximum dispersion on her secondary guns comes down to 123 meters at 11.3. While in case of Oklahoma, it's down to 197 at 8.3, right? So Massachusetts, an additional 3 kilometers, lower maximum dispersion by, what is that, a third, versus Oklahoma. In addition to just how accurate these secondaries are, it's also the firing angles. So within the 20 degrees, you can get 7 of them on target. But if you want to get 9 of them, which is, the half of the 18 that the ship has, it has 10 times 1 and 8 times 1. You have to go all the way to 40 degrees. In case of Massachusetts, all that's needed is 23 degrees to get the 10 secondary guns on target. So most of the time, you're only doing 7 guns if you are nose in, right? And your accuracy, especially for smaller targets, it's not really there because I've had a few destroyers would wander in into my secondary range, and I would occasionally hit them, but not nearly enough as I would with the Massachusetts secondaries. and their damage totals and their fire starting ability and also my lack of speed really didn't make them very useful or very effective, which is a shame because having a good secondary ship at this lower tier would be great. I think it would bring some of the joy and excitement players get from playing Massachusetts, Georgia, Ohio at the higher tiers to lower tiers. Another thing that's worth mentioning are just the firing angles on the main battery. So Oklahoma does a lot better than Texas and New York in that department. Her firing angles in the front are 32 degrees, 31 degree in the back. Texas, for example, it's 45 degrees in the front, 40 degrees in the back. And New York, it's even wider. It's 54 degrees front and 48 degrees back. So in terms of being able to hone in on your opponent and not show too much of your broadside, Oklahoma does a lot better. But again, it's just let down by her AP pen values. Now, moving on to the AA defense, uh, Oklahoma's AA defense is comparable to New York's, which means it's not really great. It has three flak explosions, which neither Texas or New York have, and also it reaches out to 4.8 kilometers, which is not the case with Texas and New York. But then in terms of DPS, it's comparable. In terms of continuous AA damage, it's comparable to New York, and it's a lot less than Texas. So you don't really get a great AA defense for the tier. In terms of hit point pool, it's 48,200, very close to Texas at 49,100 and New York, which also has the same 49,100. And then concealment, it's something where Oklahoma comes ahead, 11.8, and versus 14 kilometers for Texas and New York. And I'm not sure if the thinking here was because you have such bad guns, the main battery guns, maybe you can, uh, sneak up on a cruiser and catch her unaware, and your AP guns have enough pen values to citadel them, and then very soon thereafter you can close in on the secondaries. The issue is obviously A, you have to remain unspotted, right, by destroyers or any other ship, and B, your speed will never allow you to really close in on a cruiser within the secondary range unless the cruiser commits some grave error and decides to engage you from close proximity. And lastly, maneuverability, and I spoke about this, speed 19.7, not 19.5, 19.7 knots versus blazingly fast Texas at 20.5 and New York 21. So these dreadnoughts, even for the tier, I mean, US lags consistently. Now Oklahoma lags even more, even if it's by a smaller number. And given that you are always maneuvering, that value is not 19.7. It's probably closer to like 14 or 15 knots, and that's just very painful. So all in all, I'll just go back and mention that finishing the collection is not hard. If you just play the game, you're able to do it. So that's definitely a plus for World of Warships. The way the ship looks, I think it's definitely a plus. She's really a beautiful ship. I like her more than either Texas or New York. Unfortunately, in terms of what she can do in the game or how effective she is, in my opinion, she's the worst of the three. And honestly, I think it's hard to find another battleship at the tier that does worst when it comes to the main battery. And main battery is what's the most important thing that the battleship can have that makes her the most effective. Secondaries, it's a great idea. Okay, they're not so precise, not so impactful, but if you had a little more speed, maybe you'd be able to engage more. If you had, guns in line with your sister ships in the Texas and New York, the ship would be a lot more desirable. But where she is now, She's just going to be eye candy and spend the most time just sitting in the port like a true port queen. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoy Thanksgiving and have a great time. Stay safe. Maro out.